do that worked so well was to be a myth buster. So I'll give you an example. So when I started working with Deepak, which was in 1992 or 93, he had self-published his first book, and his second book was just coming out. And, you know, a few people knew who he was, but he wasn't a big star. And, you know, here he was, this medical doctor, an endocrinologist who was, you know, writing about this thing called Ayurveda, which nobody had ever heard of.
Right. Now we've heard about it, but then, God, I bet.
Holistic medicine, alternative medicine, complementary medicine. I mean, there were all these words that were not in the lexicon. And so, you know, and you know, you get on a talk show, maybe you have 3.5 minutes, maybe you get 7 minutes if you're lucky. How do you translate a guy with a name you've never heard of, talking about stuff you've never heard of, that leads back to selling a book? And I remember we had such a good time. We booked him on the Phil Donahue show, which was pre-Oprah days, but it was the biggest show to get on. And the pitch was basically, you know, if Phil went to a doctor for his annual checkup, he could expect to spend an hour there, and they would listen to his heartbeat and listen to him breathe, and they would take blood and they would look at his blood and they would do all these tests, right? I said, well, I've got this guy who only has to hold onto his wrist for less than 30 seconds and feel his pulse, and he'll be able to diagnose him. It's like, well, what are you talking about? So Deepak went on Phil Donahue, you know, held his pulse, and within seconds said to him, I bet you have a lot of digestive issues. And Phil's like, yeah, how did you know that? And he said, and I'll bet you're very quick to anger, but also quick to forgive. And Phil's not, like, totally confused. What are you talking about? And Deepak said like 3 or 4 more things, and Phil's kind of like bewildered. Yeah, well, how do you know that? And Deepak said, well, that's because in Ayurvedic medicine, you're what's known as a pitta type, and pittas are blah, 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 you know, and suddenly everybody's mesmerized. And he said, I can do this with anybody. So after that, he then went on this other show, which isn't around anymore, called Sally Jesse Raphael, did the same thing, totally blew her mind. And then, since I was studying this stuff while I was pitching it, I came up with this pitch for him, because there's 3 basic types in Ayurveda. You're either a pitta, which he just described, fiery, high energy, busy type, or you're a vata, which tends to be skinny, nervous energy, anxiety ridden, or you're a kapha, which means you look at food and you gain weight and you're laid back and easygoing. And so I don't remember the name of the show anymore, but it was one of those 5-day-a-week strip talk shows. And I said, listen, Deepak's going to come on and he's going to explain to everybody how they're either a Cher, a Hillary Clinton, or an Oprah. Okay?
Awesome.
And, you know, in a short amount of time, we had this visual going, because we had pictures of the 3 most famous women in the world at the time. He could describe to them their body type and how you might be one of those, and then what to do about it. So it was just by being that creative, getting inside of the client's message, and then finding a very unique, interesting way to present it so that the audience could absorb it. And of course, then they wanted to go buy the book so they could learn more. And what can they do about it? So if I am a pitta type, what kind of food should I be eating to calm down my pitta nature? You know, or if I'm a vata type and I'm just too nervous and anxious, what are the foods I could eat? What are the yoga poses I could do that would calm me down?